Hey everybody, welcome back to the Center for Off-Road Research, Shenanigans, and Science. And today I'm going to show you why big articulation on the front axle is actually bad. And I don't believe you're not going to believe me until you see it, but I'm going to show you why it just isn't so good. And I'm also going to show you why I only put one double barrel shock on my chassis. And I've made one for my Tetra 24 to do the same thing. It has the equivalent of a flex blade. I made it myself out of a bottle cap, but you can see that it articulates and drops the axle a whole lot more than stock. So anyway, this thing is actually becoming good. I put some full-size 1.2 tires on it, and they're stupid big, but it actually does really well now. There are places where it will crawl better than my SCX24. Overall, it's still not there, but I'm working on it, and if I could get the tires down to scrambler size, it would probably be pretty decent. I really wish I could put a PN90 in it with an SCX24 transmission. And just a future video, these are the RC Crawl wheel weights, and I'm going to be putting these in my 1.9 coming up. They'll work in a 1.2, but on a 1.0 tire, they're a little bit small. There's just not enough room for them inside the tire. They might work with the big tires like the scramblers, but just to be on the safe side, I put them on the 1.2s or more, and that also gives you a little bit more diameter to blow these up. And one thing that's kind of cool is he has a narrow one that fits in like a narrower track, and then staggered. They're going to be a little bit less weight, but that'll be a future video. I'll find out how much these weigh per inch. But anyway, back to the question at hand: why is big articulation bad? And I'm going to take my E1, because I've had full articulation on this before with double barrels on all four corners, and it was horrible. So I'll show you why it was horrible, and then we'll swap it back to how it is right now, and I'll show you the difference. I'll show you another reason why. I'll show you something else I do that makes a difference that you wouldn't necessarily think would. But notice the left shock is mounted properly and the right shock is mounted inverse. And just due to gravity, you'll notice that that right shock moves a lot smoother. The left shock is not releasing the double barrel. There it goes. And that is just due to sometimes gravity, sometimes other reasons. In this case, I need to put a spacer there, but they do work more smoothly when they're inverted for the double barrels. And you'll also notice with all that metal down lower, you have a lower center of gravity. It's not much, but when you're climbing at the tipping point, that might be all you need. I have this incline set at 56.1 degrees because that is how exact we are here at the Center for Off-Road Research, Shenanigans, and Science. And I'm going to show you why Big Flex does not work for climbing. And I'll start off with just showing you the vehicle at rest. And at rest, I have stock springs on it. All four springs are currently sitting in their at rest position. Nothing is hyperextended, nothing is blown out yet. But watch initially what happens when we start climbing. The first thing that happens when you apply torque is right here. You can see, let me pull this camera off. I haven't even really begun to climb yet much, but it's already starting to extend the shocks on the left hand side of the car, and that's due to torque twist. You'll see what happens next. As we get steeper, maybe a better shot from the side. As we get steeper and torque becomes more of an issue, watch what happens to that left rear. See how it's starting to stand up? Also, looking at the front, we have full extension, which just flipped over here, but it had full extension on that shock. And when you have full extension, you have an uncontrolled center of gravity, which basically let the front of the car tip up more than it needed to. There, you can see it did it again. It does it every time. It will hyperextend. And as soon as it hyperextends, you just lost several degrees of pitch at the body that you could have used for climbing. Also, when I did that last one, notice as soon as it puts torque on the front tires, that back end rises. You see it rise right here. Watch it again. It sits down. There it goes up. Now watch what happens when the back tires hit the yellow surface. You'll see that the shocks will really stand up now. See that happen? And they stood up for a while. Now the fronts are hyperextended, and it's already lifted the left wheel off of the surface. As soon as you lift a wheel, you're in trouble of flipping. It's imminent. I'll see if I can do it. I can't even do that climb. Alright, we'll try it again. Just to the back up. Not gonna work. But this is why I just don't like it for climbing. Now I'm gonna do something that you're not gonna expect, that will give this thing the climb that it needs to make this happen. These are rubber bands from braces. My son has braces, and he has different rubber bands than these now, so I have these. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie the shocks down in all four corners and get rid of all of the flex. Watch what happens. You can see that I rubber banded down the front shocks, so they are at full compression. They cannot open up, and I've decided to leave the right rear free, because what happens when you hit the gas, it's going to torque right, and when it torques that way, it's going to squat it down anyway. The left side, the top of the drive shaft rotates this direction towards that wheel, and the equal and opposite reaction is to roll the body to the right. Torque goes this way, body goes that way. So I'm going to show you that this corner here does not matter for climbing, and that's why I run a double barrel on the right rear only. And I've not changed the angle of the board at all. Notice that the body stays planted. No suspension geometry has changed at all, and it easily climbs. I can even gun it and it doesn't flip over. That was at 56 degrees before. And notice that you get no rear rise at all, no torque twist. It just climbs. Let's find out how steep I can go with this. I'll have to take my phone off and measure the board, but before it couldn't go up 56.1. Now it's got no trouble at all doing that. And some of you are going to say, oh yeah, use limiting straps. They're the best thing ever. Not into that. If they work for you, great, but they're not my thing. I have the angle now set to 60.4 degrees, and I've got the three corners tied down, and this is a big tire car. So you're starting off with the center of gravity already high, and I'm at the limit of the tires, not the limit of the chassis. The tires aren't going to be able to handle more than that, but the right front pretty much stays, the left front pretty much stays planted on the ground. We've got no torque rise, no torque roll, and no front end lift either, because just the fact that you're putting torque on the rear axle to push forward is going to cause that front end to want to sort of wheelie, and without the ability to flex out, it's not going to wheelie. Just for fun, in the same shot, I'm going to now take the front ones off and show you what happens with same angle. Haven't changed it, except now I've allowed the front end to rise. So I've got front end torque rise. You can see it's already having trouble. See that? Hyperextended. And now it can't climb. Wants to, but I'm nowhere near the limit of the tires anymore. I'm near the limit of the chassis. That's front end torque rise, and the same thing happens at the rear when I take the rear one off. Now it's going to have a rear torque rise too. Completely free chassis. It's going to have no chance of making it now. This is the Rockslide area of my course, and we're running it full free. Okay, we're facing that whole torque rise at front and back. Watch what happens if I hit the gas here. It just wanted to take it right over. Also, you notice that it flipped very easily there because nothing is controlling the center of gravity at the moment. It's allowed to pitch to the right, left, any which way it wants to roll, it can. As long as you're on level ground only, hyperflex can be good until you drop a wheel into a hole. But it just feels unstable. Watch the rear end when I put it in reverse here. See how it just jumps up? That body's allowed to just bounce all over the place. Some of that can be controlled with oil or grease in the shocks, but I just think that's out of control CG. This next climb I'm going to show you is usually pretty easy for this vehicle. Has no trouble with it with regular shocks. You saw it just flipped over to the right there, and that was a torque roll. And the steeper you get the chassis, the more easily it's going to torque roll. I'm going to try several times to make this go up there. As soon as it lets that body twist, it raises the left front. There it goes. Nothing you can do about it. Uncontrolled torque twist. It's actually kind of squatted on itself. It has full extension on the front and rear shocks. The only thing left for it to do is tip over backwards. It's just uncontrolled. But I'm going to show you guys why this wins Flex Friday. I mean, for Flex Friday, it's beautiful. It really can put a deep lean on it, keep the tires on the ground, no problem. But when you start trying to drive it on a course with any type of incline at all, you lose. I've tried multiple times to get this up there with this configuration. Every one of them has failed. Maybe I'll make it this time. I don't know. I did, but it made a lot of took a lot of tries. I'm going to try to make this off-camber transition with these shocks this way, and I can already tell you it's not going to happen. It's already fully extended the left rear and the left front, so there's no way that's getting over this. I'll try another run at it. Just do a manual reset here. Okay, one thing that's just happened is I dropped the wheel deep into a hole there. That's one that I would normally have tied up with a stock shock. I was able to bring it out that time. But what's happening now is one thing people don't understand is if you have something that can hold down the car as it's trying to lean before it hits the tipping point, if it's able to be held down, it would probably be able to do it. If your shock hyperextends and never carries the weight of the tire to help keep the body pinned down, I don't know if you're following me on that, but the weight of the wheel helps keep it planted. All right. If the chassis is able to roll past the tipping point without lifting the wheel's weight was never in play to help keep the chassis stable. I hope that makes sense. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But sometimes having the weight of the wheel is all it takes to keep it from flipping. In this case, it's probably just going to keep flipping. And I do apologize for the length of this video. It's probably going to get a little long, but I want to make sure that I completely demonstrate what happens when you have hyperflex. Pretty much that. Let's try one more line, and then I'm going to put it back the way I had it with 3 shocks, stock, and 1 double barrel. It's just noodling around. I can't even point it where I want it to go. It just wobbles, and I need it to be able to track straight up this in order to make it. And it's wanting to flip over on me. Alright, I'll show you one more thing actually before changing it back to stock in on 3 corners, and this is something you probably never thought of. I'm about to do a descent, and I want you to watch what happens as the angle gets steeper. The body will be unchecked, and watch what happens to that rear. It's already starting to rise, and I haven't even barely started down. But I'm at full extension right now, and that thing wants to tip over. I'm just gonna wiggle that down with the tires, not even use throttle. It's a pretty good trick that works pretty well. But I'm probably gonna be able to get down this without flipping it. But you're losing, nope, didn't happen, because it let that butt end rise up, center of gravity went off, and out it went. We're going to do one more descent just to show you that rear end rise. I'll probably make it down again here because the rocks are pretty steep, but in this case it's carrying a wheel when it doesn't even need to. Way up in the air. That's a loss of center of gravity. I'll show you this on the board just to make it a little more clear what's happening. What you see here is the vehicle at rest. Keep an eye on the back shocks. The steeper it gets, I've extended to the first setting, second setting, and the tipping point. I'll find out what that tipping point is, and then we'll put the stock shocks back on the way I had them, and I'll measure that again. The left column here has the results with double barrels on all four corners, climbing 60.1, 46.6, 44.9, and the left leaning was 40.9, and these are side hilling numbers. If you just tip it without it moving forward, just I'm tipping the plane and seeing where it gave up, and this is with the stock plus one double barrel on the right rear, which I like, and I've showed you why earlier in the video, but it's quite a big change. We got 4.4 more degrees of climb. That is very significant. Descending, I do have a little bit, it's about the same. You get a little steeper, about another degree out of the descent. You feel it more when you're driving it though, when it's more pinned down this way. The right side hilling was not a lot different, but again it was an increase, and the left side was significant. Leaning to the left, this thing does almost 4 degrees more with the more pinned down shocks. And what I'm going to do next is just show you those same lines I did before. Alright, you watched this earlier with the full flex, and I'm going to try it again with more of a factory style setup on the shocks. There we go. We're going to run the same line as before. That's what stock shocks can do. Stays composed, doesn't tip backwards, you can climb, works good. I'm going to try that same line as before with the off-camber slope, and with any luck I'll be able to pull it off this time. I have more side hilling ability. I was able to do that because it stayed composed once again. It didn't flop over or torque twist to the right and fall down the hill. It just works this way. I would never be convinced that Big Flex is the way to make a car perform, because it's just not. It makes the car unstable. The center of gravity is out of control, and it does goofy things that you can't predict. A car that's stable is predictable. You can do things with it. So that's my video for tonight. I hope it was helpful. If you disagree, that's fine. Feel free, but this is how I like to set my trucks up.